listening to Para X. Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Hey, Merry Meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron here on the Para X Radio Network. I'd like to thank Lisa Thiel for allowing me to use her music to open my show, and tonight's song, Even in the Deepest Dark, seems to fit the show this evening because the lyrics are true. Even in the deepest dark, the light doth shine. Now, tonight we're going to be talking to Echo Bodine, a renowned spiritual healer, psychic, author, and teacher, about a subject that's both kind of feared and embraced, depending on the situation. So there's one example of the duality of light and dark. Now, Echo lectures around the country on many topics, including life, death, and life after death. And tonight we're going to explore what happens when we die, which just happens to be the title of her new book. Echo, it's a great pleasure having you back, and thank you so much for popping in.
Honey, are you kidding? I love it. I love hanging out with you and Tim. This is great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're just feeling sorry for those of us in the loony bin or something. You're just having a good time.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, if it works, it works. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
That's right. That's what I think.
First and foremost, I have to tell you that I was so happy to have read your book for a variety of reasons. And I have been nagging people for the last 3 days to go buy it. Swear. And yeah, it's just one of those things because I think what hit me the most is that it's a difficult subject to approach. It's a difficult subject to talk about. But by the time I got through with the book, it kind of lightened my soul instead of darkened it.
I love that.
And I think that's very, very important. And I also like the fact that most of the book explains death and dying from the soul's perspective. And if you wouldn't mind, could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Well, sweetie, yes. That's really why I wrote the book, because, us humans, we have our ideas about death, and we pretty much focus on death from our perspective, from the physical body perspective and the conscious mind. And just being with people, because of being a healer, people will call me and say, my loved one is taking a really long time to die. Would you come and communicate to their soul, find out why they're still here? What are they waiting for? Is there something we're supposed to be doing? And so I would go and communicate with the soul. And the soul's perspective is definitely different than our perspective. And, it's just so interesting because people, Marla, there's just so many points to it. And I could even just slow down right now. And anyway, listening to people talk and listening to families talk about, one of the questions people ask all the time is, why is God making my loved one suffer? Why won't God let her die? And that is just so not where it's at. It's about the soul is the one that's struggling to let go of the physical body, let go of its life, let go of its relationships with its loved ones. It's like the soul is saying to itself, okay, this is it. This is it. This is the last time in this body. And so the soul is taking somewhat of an inventory and just sitting. Sometimes, the soul will just stay right there in the hospital room and just watch their loved ones come in and talk. And a lot of times the soul is out of the body over on the other side, getting ready to come over to the other side. And so it really is not God that is, asking that person or making that person suffer any at all, really. God doesn't want the soul or the body to suffer at all, but it's what we're going through at the time. So that's just one thing that I saw over and over and over that I thought, oh my gosh, people, I just need to share this information with people so that people can relax a little bit more about death and not play the blame game with God or get mad at the person. Because some people will call and say, God, my loved one just won't die and I got to get back to work. And what do they need from me so that we can move this process along? And, we don't want to get mad at that person because that's not going to help anybody if we get upset with the dying because they're taking too long to die. And so, again, another reason why it's like, okay, everybody, just relax. The soul will go when the soul goes. And so there were just so many little misconceptions that I just had to write the book.
Mm-hmm. Now, the title of the book, What Happens When We Die, is actually the $64,000 question, and I know there's no straightforward, simple answer to that because the process of dying and ultimately death itself is individual to each of us and involves lots of different things like mode of death, belief systems, whether death is expected or sudden. But is there one common denominator that we all experience in the same way?
Yes. The main message as far as what happens when we die is that, yes, there really is a heaven, and that is where all of us head for at one point or another, and there is no hell, which is really important for people to know, because sometimes souls, that's another reason why they hang on, is because they're afraid that they're going to get sent to hell. So the goal of death really is for our soul to move out of the body and then go on to the other side and begin or pick up our life where we left off before we were born into our current life. And I think every religion believes in that. I'm not sure about every religion, I guess, but I know there are lots of people out there that don't believe in anything, don't believe in a life after death. Some people think that once we die, it's just all blackness and nothing ever happens, but that is absolutely not true. That's not true. We do go to a place. A lot of people refer to it the other side. A lot of people call it heaven. Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing we all have in common, is that there is a place for our souls to go once we've passed on.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've got a question from the chat room, and I think you should answer it because this is part of what you talk about in the book. She said, why would a young child suffer so much when they haven't even started their life? Are they possibly an old soul who had some unfinished business? And that reminds me of the 9 suitcases story, and that's why I want you to talk about it.
Okay. Yes. Why would a child suffer so much? Yes, it could be unfinished business. Most of the time when we come in, and the story that Marla is referring to, I love this story because did it show me a lot. I used to be a labor coach for different women that didn't have a partner, and I would always see the soul in the delivery room just waiting for its body to be born. Most souls, especially the older souls, they will wait until that little baby body is born because they've been through the birth process, and it's a pretty tight squeeze. And so most of them will stay outside and wait unless the mother is stressed or the baby's body might need some help getting out. Then the soul will go into the body. But usually they're in the delivery room waiting for that body to be born. And in this one particular case, one night there was a male soul, and they always look like an adult soul, standing over in the corner with his 2 spirit guides. And there were 9 suitcases standing, or just kind of piled up on the floor. And so I said to the soul, I just sent a thought over to him and said, okay, what are those suitcases for? And the thought that came back was, these are the issues I'm bringing with me into this lifetime to heal. And I thought it's like, oh my gosh. And then when his little body was born, he just took those suitcases and put them inside of his little body and told me that at a certain point, each one of those issues would come up in his life, and then he would deal with it. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I was, I thought, boy, 9, that's heavy,
No.
but probably some people come in with trunks.
Oh, girl, I believe it. Oh, yeah. And,
Moving
sometimes children will come in, a soul will come in and be born with a child that has cancer or something that, is a real challenge, let's say, for that soul, that person, and the family. And a lot of times it is to help the family heal. There could be problems in the family, and the physical problem pulls the family together. Sometimes it's just the soul coming in, learning compassion, teaching others different things. It's a variety of different reasons why a little child would have the illnesses that they do. So I can't just say it's just one thing or another, but a lot of times it's to help an entire family heal and change and grow.
And I think it's important to also talk about the fact that what you talk about in the book about us planning our lives before we come here, that sometimes it takes quite a long time to do it, but everything is kind of laid out. It's like a blueprint of what we're going to experience here, and sometimes why, right?
That's right. Oh, yes. Before we come in, our lives are very well planned out, and the family that we're raised in is a family that will help us to achieve our goals the best. Now, a lot of people out there are going to say, no way did I choose my family, or no way did I want to be born in this family. But if they can separate their emotions from the family experience and just look at each family member, okay, what did this brother teach me? What did this sister teach me? What did I learn from this mother? What did I learn from this father? If we can look at each member of our family as a blessing for us in some way, it will help us kind of see part of our life plan, why we chose this family, why it was so significant for our soul's growth. And our death is written into our life plan. And so, if a child comes in and they're diagnosed with something at 4 and they die at 6, that was written in their life plan. That is not an accident, or that is not God saying, I know you all love her very much, but I feel like having her home with me. It's not like that. It is a planned, it's a predestined date.
Mm-hmm. So God gets kind of a lot of the blame when it actually isn't he or she.
That's right, sweetie.
Yep.
He does. He, she, they get a lot of blame for the way things go around here. And, really it's kind of like, saying that God gets, or how can I say that? It's kind of like, we go off to college or go off to some kind of school and then things don't go so well. And so, do we blame the administration? It's like, no, it's just the way school is. And that's kind of coming to earth is like going to school. And so do we blame God for everything that goes on here? People ask me all the time, if there's really a God, why does God allow evil or sickness or God murders? It's like God gave us free will. We're the ones that are making the choices to do these things. It isn't God that's choosing to do these things, but God has said, you got free will, go and do a good job, and we come in and a lot of us screw up, and we do bad things to other people, and that's what karma is all about, is that if we do hurt another person, we do have to make up for that in some way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you're right, sweetie. God does get a huge, oh, God. God is blamed for all of it, really.
I'm not trying to be glib, but it's like, okay, God, you're the fall guy now, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm guessing that fear of the unknown is probably the biggest stumbling block that we have in being able to accept our own deaths. Now, to begin with, we don't know when, where, how, and then we worry about what it'll feel like. Some people are going to worry about whether or not they're going to hell. But to me, I'm curious about the souls who never believed in an afterlife of any kind while they were alive, and then suddenly find themselves somewhere on the other side, very much alive in, a different sense than human life, but they're alive, except for the body. And it must come as a tremendous shock for them. Now, have you come across spirits who have been in the position of not believing that they're dead because they seem to still be alive and not in the eternal slumber that they were hoping for? And how do you deal with them?
Well, where I find them is with ghosts, where the souls that are earthbound, and their whole thing is, well, I don't believe in life after death, so I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead. And so they'll just like hang out in somebody's house and wait for somebody to come and talk to them or help them to figure it out. Now, I've seen, I've talked to angels and I've said, have you talked to them? Why don't you talk to them? And, the guides on the other side, the angels, they'll say, hey, we have talked to them. And they don't believe us. They think that they're hallucinating. They don't believe in us. And so it's such an interesting situation. But at some point, often someone in their family dies and comes and gets them and says, hey, you know what, we were wrong. there is life after death, and I've been over there, and it's really cool, and why don't you come with me, and I'll show you what it's all about. So eventually they all go over, but, a lot of them hang out here because they just don't understand. They had such a blind eye to understanding it or being open to it, and so they're faced with it, when they die.
Yeah, it's got to be an interesting thing to tackle at that point. But I know on investigations that we've been on, when we've had a medium with us and spirits have asked to cross over, they will just be so happy to see somebody they know on the other side and go so willingly and happily. It kind of makes you cry because it's so nice to see.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
All right. Now, I'm going to be jumping around here and there because there's just so much to cover, and I'm trying to get as much in as we can. In the book, you referred to the elders, who are our advisors about making wise decisions for our soul's growth and development. Now, some people might not understand the concept of the soul growing and developing. Like, why do they need to? Why do we keep coming back? So can we talk just a little bit about why there is that need for growth and development on the other side?
The whole purpose of reincarnation is, when we were first created, when our souls were created, first of all, our soul is made up of energy. And so we are like a big blob of energy, and we come from God. And a lot of us, we don't know what that even means. For someone to say to us, you are perfection, it's like, okay, what does that mean? And so we come to school to understand, to have the same understanding and compassion and patience and love as God has. And we go through every possible learning experience. We have all the different careers. We live all the different religions, the races. We experience everything. And what it does is, the goal of all of this is to, as my teacher used to say, sit on the right hand of God. And in order to sit on the right hand of God, we have to go through all these different experiences to be a God, to be, how to explain it? Oh, honey, it's just...
I know, it's complicated. It's like layers on layers and layers of things.
Exactly. It is. It is like layers and layers and layers. Yep.
Like an onion.
Oh.
Well,
Exactly.
let me jump over
Go ahead,
to something else that really kind of fascinated me. Were exit points.
Yes.
I think when I read them, I went, wow. So let's explain exit points and let's do a little enlightening about exit points, because I was kind of surprised.
Okay. An exit point is usually that place if we have an astrology chart done, it'll show exit points. And some of us have maybe 2 or 3 different exit points in our chart where it shows that, okay, this could be a time right here where your soul says, you know what, I've done enough. It's kind of like, okay, are you going to go to college and get a 2-year degree? Are you going to get a 4-year degree? Or are you going to get a 6-year degree? And so after completing your 2-year degree at school, you might say to your counselor, okay, I'm done. And you graduate, which means to the soul, you die. You pass on, you go home to the other side. But you might say to your counselor, which is one of the elders, you know what, I want to go for 2 more years. Okay, great. So you keep on going for 2 more years, and then you graduate. Or you might say, you know what, I'm going the full 6 yards. I'm going to get it all. And so your soul waits until your final exit point, which could be, 95 years old. And some people in their astrology charts only have 1 exit point. So they don't have choices, okay? But a lot of, it's usually the older souls have exit points where they can decide, no, I feel like I've learned enough in this lifetime. I'd like a break. I'd like to go back home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's what it is.
I never thought we had escape clauses, or our souls had escape clauses, and that kind of struck me interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know. I found it very interesting too. I remember many, many years ago. I think I talk in there about when I was 29 years old and I had a hysterectomy, and Marla, this is so fascinating to me. So it was a Tuesday morning that I had the hysterectomy. So I go down at 7:00, and the next thing I know, I wake up, and I'm thinking it's Tuesday, right? Of course, and it's Saturday. And when I woke up that day, my astrologer who was also my best friend. She's sitting at the end of the bed. I open my eyes. The room is full of flowers. I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? Is she here? What? And she looks at me. She says, "Oh, thank God." And I said, "Thank God what?" And she says, "That you woke up." And I said, "God, Jenny, I just had surgery a couple hours ago." And she says, "Echo, it's Saturday." And she says, "You have been out this whole time." And she said, "In your chart, it shows that you are at an exit point." And so she says, "I've just been sitting here waiting for you to wake up." And she said, "Okay." I said, "What's an exit point?" She explained it to me, and my soul, obviously, Marla, I believe my soul was on the other side, talking to the guides, talking to the elders, saying, "Okay, you know what? I want to keep going, and I'll learn a lot from this experience, and I can use it in my work as a healer." And now I have compassion for women who go through menopause, because I went through menopause right after that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to use this. I'm going to benefit from this as much as possible and use it in my work. So I came back.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I do too. Now I just got a question from the chat room. Mm-hmm. And he said, if the other side is so peaceful, no pain, no death, exactly, why would anyone want to come back here?
Well, you know why? Because we get this urge in us, this desire in us to go and learn more. And for people that are listening right now, just think back to, have you taken a class lately or read a book? You get this inner desire that, you know what, I want to grow some more. And so we go and we take a new class, or we go and buy that book, and we buy these things. We take these classes to enrich ourselves, to develop ourselves to our higher potential, to raise our consciousness. And so that's what happens on the other side. Is we're over there for a while, we're living life, we're relaxing, but we start to get that urge to go back to school. And that's what happens is, we start thinking about it, and then we go to the elders and we ask them if they will help us to plan our next incarnation. And there are other planets, there's other solar systems where we go to learn things. They say that Earth is the planet where you come to learn about emotion. And so we choose to come to Earth, and that starts the whole thing. They pick out a family that will serve us the best as far as what we want to learn, and that's what happens. Now, at a certain point, we reach that state of perfection, and we don't need to come back to Earth anymore. So there will be a point when you're in heaven where you don't even think about it anymore. You don't even, it's not even a thought anymore that, I got to go back, which is very nice.
I've heard that all along, that you just have to keep going to school till you graduate, and then you have to go back to school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Simply put, right. Now,
oh boy, huh?
You've touched upon a couple of very delicate topics in the book, suicide and when a child dies. Now, why was it important to talk about these things?
You know, what's important about, first of all, the thing that's important about suicide is that when religion teaches us that if we commit suicide, we hang in limbo until God allows us into heaven. And that is absolutely not the truth. Heaven is open to everybody. And nobody has to stand outside the pearly gates and wait until it's their allotted time. And especially someone that commits suicide, there's going to be helpers, caregivers that are going to come to their aid to help them, because obviously they're depressed enough to commit suicide. So that's something that's important. The other thing that's important to know about suicide is that people commit suicide because they think it's going to be a solution to their pain. Once they're out of their body, they're not going to have that physical or that mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual pain anymore. But that pain that they're feeling, that depression that they have, is actually in their soul. And they came to earth to heal that pain. And so leaving the body, committing suicide, is not necessarily a solution at all. All it's going to do is compound the problem a little bit more, because now you've still got the depression, and now you're feeling really bad because you're seeing how much pain your family is in, and you no longer have a body to work it out with. We work things out. We can work things out on the other side, but it's a much slower pace over there, which is fine. But, you know, a lot of us are just in a hurry to end this reincarnation cycle and really just go home and stay home back in heaven. So, you know, for people who are contemplating it right now that are listening to this, I would highly recommend that you do everything possible while you're here in your body to heal yourself, instead of thinking that suicide is going to be an answer. And for people who have lost a child, you know, something that people always say that I've always wondered about, you know, where did they get this idea? People say a parent should never bury their child. It's like, where did we get that idea? You know, there is no guarantee when we give birth to someone that they're going to live a long and happy, productive life. The only guarantee is that we've just given them birth, and that's about it. And so we need to not take people's lives for granted, not assume they're going to be here forever. We need to cherish the people in our lives for the time that we have them now. And the other thing is that if a child passes away, you know, I've seen some parents who are so deep in grief that they almost give up their own life because they're so lost in their own grief. And what they need to understand is that that kind of grief affects the child also. The child feels very, what would the word be? Very tied to that parent. They don't feel free. The child is really worried. I'm thinking about right now one of the kids in the Columbine situation, where the kids that were killed in Columbine, one of the boys, I tuned into their souls right after that shooting. I tuned into them about 3 days. No, how soon was it? I wonder if it was the same day or the next day. And a lot of the kids, well, not a lot of the kids, about a third of the kids had just gone on to the other side. Another third were kind of confused. They were kind of in between worlds. You know, where do I go? What do I do? And there was one little boy who definitely remained on this side. And and I tuned into the situation to see, okay, is he confused? Does he know he's dead? And what I heard was that they said that as soon as he was killed, his soul went right home to his mother because he knew that she would be so distraught. And they showed me a picture of him, his soul, sitting on her bed trying to console her. She had just gotten the call that he had died. And I thought, okay, I understand that. He's worried about his mom, and some of the other kids, they went home right away to just be there when their parents got the news. And then some of the kids, they did. Their grandparents were there, deceased grandparents were there when the shooting occurred, so they knew that the kids were coming over that day, and they took them right on over to the other side. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of, it was very busy, and lots of deceased loved ones there trying to help the kids. And but what I did was about 3 months later, I checked in to see had they all gone over to the other side, and that little boy was still with his mother. And I asked the guides, I said, gosh, can somebody help him? I mean, just go and talk to him. And they said, he's so worried that his mother's going to commit suicide. And so he's trying to continually reassure her that, that she can make it through this. But they said, he's really tied to her. And so he's not free either. Well, I think it was the anniversary of that experience that I heard on the news that one of the mothers had committed suicide because she just couldn't handle it. And I didn't tune into it psychically, but I'm sure that was that particular family that happened to. So, it can really affect the child's soul if we hold on to them really tight and say, please, 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 please come and be with me. Please come and talk to me. Please, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. So people need to be aware of that their children will be taken care of when they get to the other side. It is not God that took their child away from them, and that if that experience happened, that was their exit point. It was meant to be at that time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Now, when I was reading your chapter on the dying process and how you had dreams of you and your mom going to the other side in the 3 years before she passed, it kind of reminded me of something that I went through with an elderly cousin, and I think this is probably not as uncommon as some people think. I had gone over to visit her on a Sunday afternoon, and we had a nice visit. And Monday morning, I woke up remembering a very disturbing dream. And in the dream, she and I were walking together it was somewhere up in the clouds. And I wasn't sure where we were going to or why we were there. But as we kept walking, there in the distance, I saw her husband, who had died probably 4 or 5 years before. And we walked over to him, and for some strange reason, I took her hand and put it in his hand. Nothing was said, and then I woke up. And when I did, I was kind of scared about the dream because, I said, why did I just hand her over to him? That was really kind of odd. And then I started realizing that it was not quite as much of a dream as a dream is, but it was just kind of like too real and gave me the willies. And then about an hour later, after I got up, the phone rang, and it was my cousin's nephew telling me that she had passed away early that morning.
Oh, man.
And I think he was even, I realized maybe that the dream was not a dream after all. Maybe I was doing a little traveling. And I think he was even more surprised than I was that instead of me breaking down and crying at the news, I just said, yes, I know she's gone, and I might have helped her cross over. And I was I got it out of my mouth. I was dead scared he was going to start screaming at me, but he didn't say anything to the negative. He was just like, okay. but we just we, we can go over there. I mean, you went over there with your mom several times. I mean, it's not it's an astral thing, yes?
Yes, exactly. Yes, our souls can definitely go over to the other side, and we can go visit our loved ones. A lot of times what happens is they'll meet us kind of halfway. So, our soul goes out of our body that night, and then we go and they come and we meet and we talk and how are you? And it's, it ends up being a very fun conversation. And the way people can tell, that's actually the easiest way or the most common way for our deceased loved ones to communicate to us is through dreams. And when we wake up in the morning and we say, wow, that was not just a dream. Okay, when we find ourselves saying those words, that usually indicates that was a real experience that we just had with our loved ones. That's pretty cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, I've heard people say that, and I've said that. I've gotten up, and I mean, one morning I had something like that, and got up, and I looked at the cat, and I go, that wasn't a dream, because there wasn't anybody else around to tell. But I had to tell somebody. But here's
yep.
But here's the other thing. As a medium, you get messages from spirit. You know the other side quite well. But I'm wondering why messages from spirit are often cryptic. Answers to the living are not as informative as we would like them to be. I mean, it's as if they're free to speak with us, but there's also a gag order about saying too much, as if there are some things that we're just not supposed to find out about. Is that kind of true, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's, because, like, if there's an experience we're supposed to go through, and, and for us it might not be such a good experience, they know about it from the soul's perspective, and they can't explain it to us. Oh geez, how can I explain all this? I'm trying to keep my answers as brief as possible and still get answers here. But it is true that when we die and we go to the other side, and then one of our loved ones goes to a medium, and I've got so many questions I want to ask them, and they give us the answers like, really? That's what's important to you to say to me tonight? And it's just not things that we think would be really cool. But we got to remember that their perspective of things does change when they get over to the other side. And so even to ask them questions about certain things, they kind of go, huh? I don't remember that, or they'll look at it from a different perspective. And that's why, sometimes the communication is just goofy, and it's not what we wanted it to be. But people need to take that into consideration that, okay, now they are a soul. They are now the subconscious mind. So they are looking at things from a different perspective, and we need to just appreciate whatever they've got to say to us instead of go with an agenda. My sister is a medium, and she does a lot of, obviously she does a lot of communication with the deceased. And we were just talking about this the other day that, she was saying, sis, people come and they want specific messages, and yet their loved ones won't give them these specific messages. And she was saying to me, what am I supposed to do with this? And I said, sis, all you can do is give what they give. And, but that's hard for the living to understand because, again, we go with an agenda and we're going to pay money to this person. And we tell the person in the car, okay, if it's really you, I want you to say the word banana. And then they get to the medium and the person brings through a completely different message. And it's like, well, is that all they have to say? Yeah, that's all that's coming through. Really? Okay. And they didn't say banana. And so we, the living, we don't understand that. It's like, well, is that really you, Dad? You didn't say banana. Yeah, but I said about 15 other things that are true. Well, yeah, but I wanted you to say banana. I mean, it's just goofy what we do. We don't understand the deceased, and we just expect that they're going to be exactly the way they were when they were here, but they're not. They have been through some changes. They've moved to a new neighborhood, so they've got a different perspective.
That's another thing I want to. That's another thing I want to bring up for a second, although I'm chuckling because the ice cream truck just drove by on the street and it was playing When the Saints Go Marching In. So, just kind of
I love it.
Cracked me up a little bit. All right. But you said this is a really interesting point to bring up, that when we cross over, we go back over there, we're not quite the same because things are different. We think differently. Our priorities are different. But the other thing that you mentioned in the book is also that the spirit undergoes a grieving process just as we do.
Yes.
And I think that would be something to bring up right now, that we're not the only ones that are sitting here crying our eyes out.
That's right. Marla, it's so interesting, because I don't know why I grew up thinking that, once we die, we go to heaven and we're just happy, happy, happy. And, where did we get that idea? I don't know. But if you think about it, it is really true that if we go over to the other side, holy smokes, we're going to miss our family just as much as they miss us. And we're going to go through our own grieving process. We're going to we no longer have our home that we, bought and paid for and lived in and fixed up. And so, okay, we've got to let go of our home, and we let go of our cars, and we let go of our pets, and we let go of our loved ones, and, maybe a business that we've built up. And so we are letting go of a lot of things. And our souls do go through a grieving process. And now, a lot of us, if we have a long dying process, our soul could be going through that grieving process while we're living. So when the soul does die, it's not going to be as hard. I talk in the book about when my mom was dying, and her dying process was she had emphysema since she was 50, and she died when she was 83. So there was a 33-year period there where every time she'd go to the hospital, we'd all kind of go, and then she'd be okay again. And especially the last 2 years when she moved into assisted living, that's for me when the grieving process really started for me with her. And I would guess that's when it started for her also. When she was no longer able to drive her car, and then the next step is now she's in a wheelchair all the time, and then the next step is now she's not in the wheelchair anymore. She just sits on the couch and she doesn't want to move. Okay, so with each one of those stages, I would guess her soul was going through a grieving process, just as I was going through a grieving process, watching her go through all these different steps. But I think for the people who die instantly, that happened in our family. My cousin's husband, he went fishing, and he was standing. They flew into this place up in Canada, and he was standing on the, I don't know what not the propeller of the boat, but whatever I don't know what those things are called, but he was standing on it, and he had stood on those things forever. He had this plane for a really long time, and his foot slipped, and he died instantly. Now, for him, when I have checked in on him, they said that it was very hard for him when he first passed over. His soul went over to the other side, but came right back and then stayed with my cousin and her daughter for the first 10 days. And then he told me, after 10 days, I will go over to the other side and I'll stay, but I need to know that my girls are okay. And I saw him at the funeral. He stood behind my cousin and her daughter, and he just stood behind them, trying to give them, I don't know, energy to keep going, because he's a very well-known person here in Minnesota. So there was like 2,500 people at his funeral, and so my cousin just, I don't know where she got the energy to do it, but I think his support was there. And then after 10 days, I saw him go over to the other side, and they just told me recently, because his daughter asked me how he was doing, and they said that he has been, because he was always the kind of guy that helped other people out, that he has volunteered to work with other men that die suddenly, because he went through the experience of it, the shock of it, and the grieving of it, and they showed me this image of a lot of men who, like, maybe die of a heart attack. They die instantly, go over. A lot of guys who haven't prepared for death or thought about life on the other side. And so now he's working with them. And they said that this is helping him with his own grief. So, it's just fascinating when you get to be able to see it from this perspective, see what's going on over there. But yes, we all go through a grieving process. We just do.
Yeah, I just, it was something I never thought about. I figured, or just didn't give it a whole lot of thought, but once they're over on the other side, well, okay, they're not that they've forgotten about us, but they've got other things to do and other things to learn and don't give it much thought. I didn't necessarily understand that the grieving process works both ways. Now, here, speaking of the grieving process, here's a great segue. When we talk about death and dying, we also need to talk about loss and healing. And I'd kind of like you to talk about healing pen pals, because I find this is not only necessary, but amazingly generous for those who have suffered a loss and need the assistance of a healer.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. God, I love that. Okay. The Healing Pen Pals is a really cool service that we have here at echobodine.com. And what it is it is long-distance healing. So if anybody out there that's listening tonight is grieving, or if you have any need for healing, for anything, you can go to my website, which is echobodine.com, and click on the Healing Pen Pal button or link or whatever that thing is called, and it'll take you to this. It takes you to a page where all we ask your name, email address, and what you need healing for and what city you live in. And then what we do is we have 140 healers that are in the Pen Pal program, and so the coordinator assigns a healer to that person, and we send absentee healing every day for 2 weeks. Now, what that means is that the healer visualizes the person and then visualizes sending, a lot of them put their hands up and they send healing directly to that person. And we ask the universe, okay, please help, Alice in her grief over the loss of her husband. And then after 2 weeks, the coordinator will send you an email and just say, would you like us to continue for another 2 weeks? And you can say yes or no. The service is free. All we ask is that people let us know how they are. And, we don't publish names. We don't give the list to anybody. It isn't like that at all. It's purely something from our hearts that we like doing, and we've had amazing results. That amazing letters back from people saying, some of the things people go through are just horrendous, and that they got the healing that they needed. So yes, anybody, please. And the healing energy really can help people in their grieving process. So I highly recommend it.
I think when I saw that, I went, wow, that is really fantastic. But as usual, time is up too quickly.
Here we go.
But honestly, I really need to say that reading the book has given me the opportunity to see things in a completely different light.
Good.
I think it should be a must-read for anyone, because death and dying is something we all experience, both as observers and eventually, unfortunately, firsthand. And again, it took a lot of the scare factor out of it for me, and opened my eyes to a lot of things that, as I said before, I hadn't thought of. So where can people get in touch with you, as well as finding out about things like upcoming events, and where can people find the book?
They can go to my website, which is echobodine.com. Now, we're just last week we published a brand new website, so we're still tweaking, and yet I think the calendar is on there. I think it's under the button events, and they can find out. I do a lot of traveling for Edgar Cayce Foundation, teaching psychic development classes. I've got one coming up soon in Florida on the soul's perspective of life, death, and life after death. So they can go to the calendar and just see what upcoming things are happening.
I think that's great. So, and also the Psychic Development for Beginners teleseminar is coming up really soon too.
Yes, for people who online, we have an online psychic development class. It's really cool. The coolest thing that I think about it is that we have students from all over the planet that take the class. So, somebody in Connecticut can become friends with somebody in Pakistan. I mean, it's just so cool. So,
it is.
If any of you are wanting to develop your abilities but don't have it available to you in your area, check it out. It's right on the home page of echobodine.com.
It is great. Well, Echo, thank you again so much for joining me and giving us some information about really important insight and information into a subject that some people just don't talk about too much. So it's really good, and I look forward to having you back again for another visit.
Okay, sweetie pie, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Well, stay on the line and we'll thank you properly. And I want to thank everybody for listening in tonight. And until next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2013. Moonlight Haw by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.